In this lecture, this will be a very significant lecture from the point of view of development in this course. We'll be seeing how to express forces on a fluid particle. Now this will be, as I said, of great significance in order to write down the governing equations of a fluid motion. So my specific learning objectives for this lecture are to develop a mathematical model for expressing forces on a fluid particle and to understand the physical meaning of divergence of stress tensor. Remember, in my earlier lectures on algebra and calculus of vectors and tensor functions, we had seen that we can talk of these curl of a vector and divergence of a vector and even divergence of a tensor of rank 2. So now you are about to see the significance of all those things, right? So we start with the expressing forces acting on a fluid particle. We start by recognizing or putting rather all kinds of forces that a fluid particle can experience into two broad categories, and you should clearly learn to differentiate because the manner in which we treat them is totally different. So body forces and surface forces. So you might have learned about them in your earlier fluid mechanics course also. So this is a good starting point here for understanding forces on a fluid particle. What are body forces? This categorization, this is basically based on the action as well as the origin of the two different types of forces. Now, the body forces originate due to an external force field. So, external force field means that the field is present irrespective of whether the fluid is present or is moving or is stationary or whatever. So, basically in a nutshell you can say that these forces are due to some external cause which is not due to the fluid motion. Okay. Now the surface forces, they originate due to the force interactions between a fluid particle and the surrounding particles. Okay. So it's like what is the interaction between a given fluid particle and its neighboring fluid. Those force interactions are rather termed as surface forces. So obviously you will realize that these actions are sort of internal to the fluid. So that's why I call them as internal action. So these are the two broad categories of forces. All kinds of forces that a fluid particle can experience can be put into either of these. Now coming to some examples, for example, body force example, the most common body force is gravity. Okay, it's the most common force field acting on all matter, in fact. So it does act on the fluid particles also. Now at this point I would like to point out that please do not confuse this gravitational force that I am talking here acting on fluid particles as the force between neighboring fluid particles, because you know that any two pieces of matter, they do exert a gravitational force on each other. So ये जो gravitational force की यहाँ बात हो रही है, body force की acting on fluid particles, this is by the Earth's gravitational field. Okay, this the gravity force between the various particles of a moving fluid, that would be very, very insignificant, and we are not talking of the gravitational force between neighboring fluid particles. Okay, we are just considering the force of gravity, which is due to Earth's gravitational field acting on all the particles. So basically the acceleration vector g, which is the intensity of the Earth's gravitational force field, that is what I am referring to here. And there can be other types of body forces on fluids. For example, you can have some externally imposed electric and magnetic fields, and you subject your fluid to that. Of course, you know that in order for the fluid to respond to these electric and magnetic fields, it needs to be electrically charged. So that's why I have mentioned here electrically charged fluid. So there are many such examples. Plasma is one, or even let's say commonly occurring water, because it has some dissolved salts and ions in it. So even under normal conditions, water has got some amount of charge elements present, and they will respond to some electric and magnetic fields, externally imposed electric and magnetic fields. So the body forces are, to reiterate, the body forces are generated on the fluid particles due to some external force field. Now I will elaborate this further and highlight all these things as I go along. So a fundamental difference between the two types of forces, you can say, one, the body force is caused by external action that are generated independent of fluid motion, and so generation is independent of fluid motion, but as I mentioned in a line below, that these body forces may be influenced by fluid motion, right? So body forces are caused by external action of force fields that are generated independent of fluid motion, but as they are generated and they influence the fluid motion, they may be influenced by fluid motion. The word may be is used because it's not necessary that all body forces get influenced by fluid motion. Let us look at the examples where this point is taken further. Consider the case of gravitational field of Earth. Certainly this field is not influenced by fluid motion. Whether the fluid is stationary or moves in whatever manner, the gravitational field of the Earth remains the same, right? So this is an example of a body force which is of course generated by an external action, but it is also not influenced by the fluid motion. Now let's go to the other example which I was talking a little bit while ago. Let's consider Lorentz force on electrically charged fluid particle, right? Now if you impose, if you have external electric and magnetic fields, only then this force will be generated at the start, okay, when you have a fluid motion going on and it is electrically charged. So unless you impose some external and electric and magnetic fields, the particles won't experience any Lorentz force. So as I again say, the cause is independent of fluid motion, but you will also notice that once these forces are generated, then the force due to the magnetic field depends on the velocity of the fluid particle also. So it is like V cross B, if you were able to recall, कोई भी charge है अगर move कर रहा है in a magnetic field, so the force is charge multiplied by V cross B. So it means it is dependent on the velocity also, the nature of the velocity. So it means the fluid motion, once this force is generated, does influence the force. So that is what I mean when I say that they may be influenced by fluid motion. Similarly, once this is there is another aspect to it. Once charged particles are moving, they also constitute currents, okay. So the current itself will induce certain magnetic field, in the fluid, so the external magnetic field will get superimposed onto the induced magnetic field. And if this magnetic field or the motion is unsteady, then the magnetic field would be unsteady, and it will in turn induce an electric field. So the whole ideas of electromagnetic induction have to be you can say accounted when we deal with these kind of body forces in a fluid. So anyway, the whole discussion simply is there just to give you this idea that these body forces originate from external causes, but they may be influenced by fluid motion. Right. Now let us now just complete this by saying that the surface force on a fluid particle is therefore a local kind of a interaction which is dependent on velocity field, and its origins are microscopic in nature, because after all, from where we are getting these force interactions between a single fluid particle and the neighboring ones, we are getting them due to force potentials and momentum exchanges that are continuously taking place at the molecular level. So although we are treating the fluid as a continuum, but the events that are taking place at the molecular level eventually will show up at the continuum level in the form of these surface forces. Okay, so the origin is microscopic. So that is the main fundamental difference, and it is local because it is dependent on the local velocity field that is prevailing in the neighborhood of the fluid particle which we are considering. So once these fundamental differences are well understood, I will move on to taking the next big step, which is developing some mathematical ways of expressing them on a fluid particle. Right. So this is just a sort of summarization of what we have talked about in this lecture so far. So forces on a fluid particle of two types, body and surface, and we are differentiating them primarily on the basis of origin. So origin in body forces case, we say that the origin is external force field, whereas for surface forces the origin is force fields and momentum exchange at the microscopic level. So it is very much intrinsic kind of a force which is dependent on the local state of fluid motion. So now coming to representation of forces. So we'll take the easy ones first. So body forces are relatively easier to represent, so let us take them first. So as I have shown a flow domain, general flow domain, some coordinate system, three-dimensional, and the force field intensity is simply expressed as B vector. Okay, and we write it as a function of r and t because we allow for the variation of this force field intensity in space as well as time. So in general, this force field, the external sort of force field, can be dependent not only on space but also on time at any given point in space. So that's why mathematically we simply write it as B vector function of r and t. Now if we consider a fluid particle, and how to consider or identify or tag a fluid particle, we simply say that at all points, at all times rather, or rather at all times and at all points there is a fluid particle because of the concept of continuum. So it means that if I at any given instant of time, if I focus at a point, I am already tagging a fluid particle or focusing my attention to a fluid particle at that point. So let's say that point is having a position vector rp, So I have a fluid particle there, notionally speaking. So I can say that if B happens to be the body force field intensity, now the intensity has to be expressed in two ways. One is you express either as per unit mass or express it as per unit volume. Okay. So body forces are generally expressed as intensities either per unit mass or per unit volume. So let's take them one by one. So suppose the instantaneous body force I want to write on a fluid particle at the position vector, the location which has a position vector rp. So I will simply write it as B, the field at that point, rpt at that instant. And since suppose if it is expressed as per unit mass, then you have to multiply with the mass of the particle at that point, right? So mass of the particle would be density of the particle and the notional volume d, or the differential volume that we have. Remember, we had talked about all this earlier also, that notionally you can say that each fluid particle has a differential volume dV. So now we can also see, so this is the way we write the fluid body force acting on a fluid particle, instantaneous body force acting on a fluid particle at some location rp. Now you can also write it if the intensity B is expressed per unit volume. So if it is expressed per unit volume, then the body force simply is B multiplied by the volume, because it is already per unit volume, so we can just multiply by the volume, not the mass. So depends on how we are writing the intensity, we can accordingly adjust our expressions for the body force vector acting on a particular fluid particle at a certain time instant. Now we can look at some examples how we adapt all this. So suppose I have a gravitational field. So gravitational field we are used to writing the field as the G vector. Now obviously G vector represents the force per unit mass, so it is basically the field intensity per unit mass. Okay, so therefore the body force acting on any fluid particle at some point rp and at a certain time instant t would be the expression which is written, density times the gravity vector and notional volume dV of the V cross rather of the fluid particle. Now in these expressions, please note that though I am not writing right now explicitly, but the density which I am using for the particle, that density need not be same for all the particles. It may be in general different for different particles. So we allow for a intrinsic kind of density variation in the flow. So the density could be different. So this rho also is a function of the position vector and time. And as far as gravity is concerned, normally you don't consider significant variations of gravity over small length scales or small distances. You usually assume the gravity vector, or rather neglect its very insignificant variation, unless the length scale is very large, like it could be of the order of several 100 kilometers or something. So possibly if you are using a very large, studying a very large flow, very large fluid flow problem having a very large flow domain, something like you are studying a, let's say a large scale atmospheric flow or an oceanic flow, maybe then if required you can consider the variation of gravity. But normally in our most engineering applications or technological applications, we don't regard the variation of gravity, okay, in space. So that means whenever we'll express the body force due to gravity on a fluid particle, this G vector will be essentially a constant vector. But as I pointed out, the rho could be still a variable thing because we allow its variation across different particles. Right, now just formally so that we are not restricted to considering only gravity as the body force, to give you an idea, if you have electric and magnetic fields, then you can write the Lorentz force, the body force, as FB equals, acting on a particle of course, FB as charge density. If I write charge density per unit volume in the fluid as sigma, then the charge on a given particle will be sigma times the volume of the particle. So sigma dV would be the charge on the fluid particle, and once the charge is known, then the Lorentz force is very easily written. It is charge times E plus V cross B. We know this from elementary physics courses dealing with electromagnetics. Okay, so sigma and dV, the product, is essentially giving me the charge of a certain fluid particle which is at some location and at some instant of time. So body force acting on that particle will be sigma dV, of course deliberately is written on the extreme right, and sigma multiplied by E plus V cross B. Now here E and B, these are total fields, okay, the external imposed fields along with whatever is induced due to the unsteady effects in the flow and due to the motion of the fluid. So the usual laws of electromagnetic induction are going to guide us in getting these induced fields. So anyway, right now I'm not going to teach you electromagnetic induction, so I'll just simply say that the total field E and B must be the combined effect of the external fields as well as the induced values of the field. So this comes to the completion of mathematical representation of body forces. So I'll summarize at the end. So the summary is very simple. A body force acting on a particle can be expressed as rho times B, which is the intensity of the body force. This is not to be confused with magnetic field B, okay? This is just a generic representation of the force field in our case. And since I am multiplying by rho, it means that I am considering B per unit mass. Now explicitly I have indicated that rho can be a function of R and T, and B is of course the force field intensity per unit mass and multiplied by the notional volume of the particle. Or if you are considering B as per unit volume basis, then you don't need to include density here. You just have to multiply by the notional volume of the particle. Now you can see that although these are looking different expressions, because in one there is density and the other there is not, but you know it's not that way. For example, if you are going to write the body force due to gravity, then you write it as the intensities per unit mass and per unit volumes would be different. Per unit mass it will be simply G vector, and per unit volume it will be rho G vector. So basically whether you write per unit mass or per unit volume, it will come out as rho G dV. Okay, so इसमें ऐसे नहीं सोचना है कि ये दो अलग एक्सप्रेशन है, तो पहले में डेंसिटी है, दूसरे में the other one doesn't have density, so it will give me two different values of the body force. No, it will not be, because the field in both cases is different. In one it is per unit mass, and in the second expression it is per unit volume. The vector symbol on FB is missing, so pardon me for this. Okay, so we move on with the surface forces now. Right, so in order to express surface forces on a fluid particle, the approach used is very similar to the one adopted in deriving the volumetric strain rate. What was that approach? If I were to remind you, first you consider a finite material region surrounding the fluid particle of interest. तो जिस particle पे आप force निकालना चाहते हैं, surface force, you surround it with a finite volume or material region at a certain time instant, and try to express the net surface force on this material volume of fluid or region R of fluid due to the surrounding fluid. So if you can successfully write that force, then all you have to do is then examine the limit of this expression if I consider progressively smaller and smaller regions surrounding the particle, and in the limit if I coincide this material region particle to the particle itself. So it means that क्योंकि इसका जो size है वो arbitrary है, तो हम इसको progressively smaller and smaller ले सकते हैं. So in the limit if this volume is taken infinitesimal itself, so it collapses to the particle of my interest, then I can if I can examine the limit, that will be the answer to my original problem of expressing surface force on a fluid particle. So this approach is not only interesting, but it has the advantage of arriving at the result in a very general way without taking help of any coordinate system. So the results are coordinate free. So these are some of the main plus or advantages of this approach. Now, now formally let us consider this material region R surrounding the particle P as I have shown, and on this surface of R or material region I consider a point which is B, and surrounding this point, the hatched area which I have shown, surrounding this point I have taken a small area on the surface. So the area is sort of infinitesimal, that's why it is written as ds, and the unit normal is n cap to the area. So you can treat the area as a planar area, no need to account for any curvature effects on the surface because it's infinitesimal. So any infinitesimal area element on the surface of a general type can always be regarded as a planar element. Okay. Now we know already that the effect of surface forces exerted by the fluid which is on the side of the normal on this area element, the shaded area element, this effect of surface forces can be represented as a area intensity or stress vector at point B. So remember, if you want to consider surface forces on a tiny area, then the area will of course from one side of the area, then the area will be experiencing a general kind of force intensity which is expressed per unit area, and this can be resolved into like a vector, three components, one normal to the area and two lying in the area themselves, means all three are mutually perpendicular, so one will be normal and two will be the shear forces lying in the area itself. So anyway, here what we are saying that in general what all you need to realize is that the surface forces acting on this small surface area element exerted by the surrounding fluid on the side of the normal, that is represented by the stress vector, and the stress vector in general will have three components. The three components can be written in the three coordinate directions. So sigma n1 E1 cap plus sigma n2 E2 cap plus sigma n3 E3 cap. This is the usual way of writing a vector in a general coordinate system. Sigma n1, n2 and n3 are the three components of this general stress vector. Now we have learnt in earlier courses on solid and fluid mechanics, because this is a second year level knowledge that I am now going to use. The stress vector on any infinitesimal planar area through a point in the continuum. So I repeat, the stress vector on an infinitesimal planar area through a point in the continuum can be expressed in terms of stress vector components along 3 coordinate planes passing through the same point. तो वो अगर आप रिकॉल कर पा रहे हो तो मैं थोड़ा सा हेल्प कर सकता हूँ इसमें. You remember when we talk of we tell you about properties of the stress tensor. We create a point and consider 3 coordinate planes at that point and write down the 3 components of stresses on each of the coordinate plane. So that makes it a total of 9 components. And then we draw a general inclined planar surface to the 3 coordinate planes, so forming a sort of a tetrahedron, and then we consider the various aspects like if the tetrahedron is made to shrink to very small proportions, then using the force equilibrium and torques and all, we can arrive at some interesting relations between the stress components on the inclined area and the 3 coordinate plane, the stress components on the 3 coordinate planes. Anyway, you can we are just interested in borrowing that result here. So वो अगर आप अपने notes देख सकते हैं solid और fluid के, जिसमें stress at a point का जहाँ पे discussion है, तो वहाँ से आपको ये result मिल जाएगा. मेरा सिर्फ concern ये है, my concern is that I want to write down these sigma n1, sigma n2, sigma n3 in terms of stress components on coordinate planes passing through the point B. तो ये जो पॉइंट बी यहाँ दिखाया गया है, जिससे कि मेरा एक जनरल सरफेस एरिया एलिमेंट है विच हैज अ नॉर्मल एंड कैप, तो अगर इसी पॉइंट बी पे 3 कोऑर्डिनेट प्लेन्स कंस्ट्रक्ट कर दिए जाएं तो उनपे भी 3 कंपोनेंट्स आएंगे स्ट्रेस वेक्टर्स के. सो इफ आई यूज दोज कंपोनेंट्स आई कैन राइट दीज 3 components which I require, sigma n1, sigma n2 and sigma n3. So that's why I simply say we know that sigma n1 is n1 sigma n11 plus n2 sigma 21 plus n3 sigma 31. And what are these n1, n2 and n3? These are components of unit vector n cap along the coordinate directions. So these are nothing but अगर आप n कैप जनरल यूनिट वेक्टर ले रहे हैं तो उसके जो तीनों डायरेक्शन से जो कंपोनेंट्स हैं, या डायरेक्शन कोसाइंस भी बोलते हैं, तो ये n1, n2, n3 आर दोज वैल्यूज, राइट. नाउ so we can write sigma n1, n2 and n3 in this manner, right. So now what is continued further on the extreme right, I have done nothing but I have introduced the dot product. Okay, so the same expression can also be written by taking for example the first sigma n1, you can focus there. I can also write it as n cap and dot product with the stress vector on the stress vector sigma 11 e1 plus sigma 21 e2 and plus sigma 31 e cap 3. So you can write it as a dot product of n cap and this vector sigma 11. इस वेक्टर में sigma 11, 21 और 31 components लिए गए हैं, right. And for the second term sigma n2, you can mathematically express this as n cap and dot product with sigma 12 e1 plus sigma 22 e2 cap plus sigma 32 e3 cap. So all this you can do it yourself, and you will be able to finally verify, because after all n cap dot e1 will be n1, n cap dot e2 will be n2 and n cap dot e3 will be n3. So basically in order to just this is another way of writing the expression that I have written on the left. राइट में सिर्फ उसका एक ऑल्टरनेटिव वे लिखा हुआ है, n1 n2 n3 को n cap dot e1 and n2 को n cap dot e2 and n3 is simply replaced by n cap dot e3. इतना किया गया है because these are components along the coordinate directions, so you can write them as n cap dot e1. n1 को आप n cap dot e1 लिख सकते हैं, इसी तरह n2 को n cap dot e2 लिख सकते हैं, और लास्ट में n3 can be written as n cap dot e3. So once you can write this like this. So sigma b vector, which can be now assembled because sigma n1 n2 and n3 expressions are with me. So if I plug them back into this sigma b vector expression, I have a result something looking like this. So since sigma n1 is now being sort of written with the unit vector e cap 1, so if you use the expressions for sigma n1 n2 and n3, you get a result of this type. Or it simply shows me that I can write sigma b as n cap dot, and what is inside n cap, if you take outside, what is inside? The expression that you are seeing is nothing but the stress tensor at point B. Why? Because it has these diodes and 9 components, sigma 1 1 2 1 3 1 1 2 2 2 3 2 and 1 3 2 3 and 3 3. So this is what is the stress tensor. Okay. So now the stress tensor it can be written using indicial notation. Now sigma ij second rank tensor को आप जानते हैं, ऐसे लिख सकते हैं. So I simply, तो वो जो summation है 9 values के ऊपर, that summation is now converted into a compact form using indicial notation. So वो 9 values जो हैं उनको आप sigma ij e cap I e cap j भी लिख सकते हैं, where of course summation over I and j is implied. So the final expression is becoming very compact. Okay, it is simply n cap dot stress tensor at point B. So all this effort that we made is really paying some dividends now. That ये सारा background जो हमने use किया, इसमें कुछ हमने हमारी जो स्ट्रेस एट अ पॉइंट की नॉलेज है जो हमने अर्लियर सॉलिड मैकेनिक्स फ्लूइड मैकेनिक्स के कोर्सेज में ली, वो सब भी यूज करते हुए हम फाइनली एक बहुत ही एलिगेंट और कॉम्पैक्ट एक्सप्रेशन पे आ गए हैं, दैट द स्ट्रेस वेक्टर एट अ पॉइंट बी ऑन द सरफेस ऑफ माय मटेरियल रीजन कैन बी सिंपली रिटन एज द डॉट प्रोडक्ट ऑफ द यूनिट नॉर्मल, लोकल यूनिट नॉर्मल एट दैट पॉइंट ऑन द सरफेस involved in dot product with the stress tensor at that point, surface point B. Okay, तो अगर आप ऐसा करते हैं तो आपको stress vector मिल जाएगा at that point B. Now it will be a straightforward matter to now write down the surface force, the net surface force on this material region R. Now here I have pointed out there is a small note written. You can see that we know that the stress tensor of rank 2 को अगर आप dot product करते हैं, so the dot product is in general not commutative, but what you see, what I have written here is that n cap dot sigma is same as sigma dot n, but I have written also that this holds for symmetric sigma only. So if you remember in my earlier 2-part lecture 6 that I delivered, there I have talked about all these things, that the dot product of a vector and a tensor of rank 2 is not in general commutative, but it will be commutative provided the tensor is symmetric. So we know that in case of a solid or a fluid, in both cases the stress tensor is symmetric. In fact ये prove भी कराया जाता है, जब stress at a point second year के courses में करा होगा आपने, तो दोनों ही केसेस में सॉलिड फ्लूइड में ये प्रूव भी किया होगा कि ये सिमेट्रिक होता है. सो Therefore, we have this result that stress vector B can be written equivalently as n cap dot sigma B, or stress tensor at point B, or flipping the tensor, keeping it first. So stress tensor at point B dot n cap. So दोनों तरीके से आप सिग्मा B को लिख सकते हैं, taking advantage of the fact that the stress tensor at any point in the fluid is symmetric. Right. Now we can express the force vector in a very straightforward manner on the elemental surface area. So because I am writing force on an elemental surface area, so I write it as a differential force vector dFs, simply the product of the area magnitude ds and the stress vector, because stress by definition is dimensionally force upon area. So dimensions उसके force upon area या area intensity होती है, तो therefore you can multiply by the area magnitude itself to get the differential surface force vector, because the stress vector B is being used here. Okay. Now notice the differences between stress vector on a given area and stress tensor at a point. तो ये एक important distinction है कि हम हमेशा जब खाली पॉइंट पे बात करेंगे तो हम कहेंगे स्ट्रेस टेंसर. एक्चुअली इट इज अ कलेक्शन ऑफ 3 स्ट्रेस वेक्टर्स ऑन 3 कोऑर्डिनेट प्लेन्स that are passing, that you can visualize through that point. Okay, तो उन तीनों स्ट्रेस वेक्टर्स का कलेक्टिव जो सॉर्ट ऑफ बैगेज है उसी को आप स्ट्रेस एट अ पॉइंट कहते हैं, एंड दैट इज रिटन एज अ टेंसर. ओके, बट जब आप कोई एरिया फिक्स कर लेते हैं, अपना अटेंशन एक एरिया पे फिक्स कर लेते हैं, तो वहां पे स्ट्रेस सिर्फ एज अ वेक्टर ही ट्रीट होता है, और इनफैक्ट इट इज अ वेक्टर. So therefore remember to differentiate between stress vector on a given area and stress at a point, which is a tensor. Okay, so stress vector sigma b ds can be written as now n cap dot stress tensor at point B, and of course multiplied by ds. So this and for symmetric sigma or symmetric tensor sigma, we can write it in this way. We can just flip the dot product by writing sigma b first and n cap later on. Now the total of net instantaneous surface force exerted by the surroundings on material region R, you just have to integrate over the entire surface. So n cap dot sigma and integrated over the entire surface. So the surface integral, notice the closed sign on the integral, double integral, so it indicates that you have a closed surface. Now to obtain the instantaneous surface force on the fluid particle, है ना, ये पहला काम तो हो गया. Material region पे net surface force we have been able to express. Now all we want to now do is invoke the limiting process of taking this material region to be smaller and smaller till it coincides the particle inside. So let us do that. So Fs on the, or the net surface force on the particle is limit region R becoming infinitesimal or reducing to the particle size. So it is particle size, remember I write as differential V cross notionally, and so this expression is just used. FSR जो हमने अभी निकाला है वो हमने यहाँ पे यूज कर लिया. I plug it here. Now since I don't have any kind of a volume integral, जैसा volumetric strain rate if you can recall, जब हम निकाल रहे थे तो हमने गॉस थ्योरम का यूज किया था, तो वैसे ही गॉस थ्योरम इस जगह भी यूज हो जाएगी. You can refer to it from the sheets on identities and theorems. वहां पे देख सकते हैं गॉस थ्योरम हमने ये वाली भी बता रखी है, dealing with tensors. Okay, so there's a Gauss theorem on scalars as well as vectors as well as tensors. तो 3 Gauss theorem है, and all 3 are given in your identity sheet. Okay, so you can refer it from there. So if I now consider the Gauss theorem, I can say that this integral, surface integral n dot sigma tensor ds is equal to the volume integral of the divergence of the stress tensor. Okay, so this is from here you can see that the divergence of a stress tensor enters into considerations. Okay, कहाँ से आ गया divergence of stress tensor considerations में? When we were trying to develop an expression for surface force acting on a fluid particle, right? So the surface force now can be very elegantly written: limit region R going to infinitesimal proportions dV. So the integral would be then simply, in the limit, the integral simply becomes the integrand multiplied by dV, right? Del dot sigma tensor multiplied by dV. So what we are left with is this is the final expression for the surface force acting on the fluid particle. So that means if I just multiply the value of divergence of the stress tensor at that point where the particle is, if I multiply notionally with the volume of the particle, I will get the surface force on the fluid particle. So now customarily you can say that what is the physical meaning of del dot sigma or the stress tensor at a point? It gives me the surface force, instantaneous surface force at a point, surface instantaneous force acting on a fluid particle at a point per unit volume, because since that dV is taken on the other side, so simply divergence of the stress tensor at a point gives you the surface force acting on a fluid particle that is instantaneously residing at that point per unit volume. So what is divergence? What is the physical meaning of divergence of stress tensor in a fluid? It gives me an instantaneous surface force acting on a fluid particle at the point under consideration per unit volume of the particle. So this is the meaning of the divergence of stress tensor. And by now we are already aware that divergence of stress tensor is a vector, and it should be a vector because I am talking of surface force. Okay, per unit volume अगर बात भी कर रहे हैं तब भी वो एक वेक्टर ही होना चाहिए. So this, to conclude, this is a very significant result. The divergence of stress tensor at a point in the flow domain gives the resultant surface force per unit volume acting on a fluid particle instantaneously located at that point. So what's written in green is the crux of the story that we have scripted so far. Now just summarizing what we have learned. So I can write the net force on a fluid particle at an instant by the vector sum of the body and surface forces. Now I already have developed the relevant mathematical ways of expressing them. So I'll just write them as F net acting on a fluid particle at an instant. So the body force is, I am using the field intensity per unit mass. So B is the force intensity. D vector is the force intensity per unit mass, so it will be multiplied by density, and the volume term I have taken outside because it is present in both the terms, both the forces. So rho times the B vector plus divergence of the stress tensor. So it comes out as a very neat and elegant expression. Again, I will point out that this is coordinate free expression because it doesn't apply to a specific coordinate system. In fact, no coordinate system was used in deriving this result, so it is a general expression, applies to any kind of a coordinate system, and you can use it to express quite generally the force acting on any fluid particle. So again I repeat, rho times B is per unit mass force field intensity plus divergence of the stress tensor, the whole thing getting multiplied by dV gives you the net surface force acting on a fluid particle. Now B in general, as I've already pointed out, the most commonly occurring body force is the gravity. So mostly gravity will always be considered unless there is a reason for not considering it. That will be problem specific, and we will see all those things later on when we are in a position to analyze fluid flows from their basic equations. And depending on whether you have a significant amount of electromagnetics going on, then this body force due to electric and magnetic fields also needs to be considered in writing this net surface force. So that's it for this lecture. I advise, rather, when you are going through this lecture, you may want to just revise a little bit from your solid mechanics and fluid mechanics courses the topic of stress at a point. Okay, so my advice is that stress at a point, you can this topic you can revise from those second year lecture notes. Thank you very much.